Welcome to the candidates and the viewers at home. This forum is being sponsored by JSA, or Junior State of America, which is a bipartisan debate and activism club. Thank you to Mayor Bob Magnus and his staff for providing us with the opportunity to host this event, and thank you for providing tech support.
Each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves and a 2-minute closing statement. They will also have 2 minutes to answer each question. They will take turns going first.
Introducing Representative Barbara Dietrich.
Well, thank you, ladies. And welcome to our Oconomowoc Junior State of America students, as well as to the adults participating here in the room, and to our viewers watching on YouTube. It has been my humble honor to diligently serve the amazing people of this legislative district, from Okauchee on the eastern side, continuing through Oconomowoc, Johnson Creek, Lake Mills, Cambridge, Deerfield, and Marshall on the westernmost part of our district. Throughout the past 2 years, I've met repeatedly with school board members and superintendents, first responders, business owners, faith leaders, workers, parents, and just people out in public to discuss a wide-ranging assortment of issues facing our state. In fact, I would tell you, during this budget season, I held more listening sessions than any of my other Republican colleagues, I think Democrat colleagues too, holding 13 listening sessions around the district various times of day. Some of my proudest accomplishments serving you this legislative session have included writing into law the expansion of Wisconsin's youth apprenticeship program, serving as vice chair of the Assembly Committee on Workforce Development, being named as chair of the Speaker's Task Force on Adoption, where we produced 8 bills, one which expanded the assistance to pay for adoption that was signed into law. I also served on the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, which cleared 76 bills. 24 of them went to the floor. 19 of those 24 passed unanimously on the floor of the State Assembly. I authored 2 beautiful pro-life bills advancing women's health care in the process and ending prenatal discrimination based on gender, disability, or diagnosis, which passed through the legislature but was ultimately vetoed by the governor. And then finally, one of my proudest accomplishments of what we've accomplished in the legislature this session is that 94.1% of what we've passed through has been on a bipartisan basis. It's been exciting work, and I look forward to continuing this work in the 2021-22 legislative session. Thanks.
Thank you. Now introducing Melissa Winker, the other candidate.
Thank you, Junior States of America. For a commitment to democracy, it is definitely to be commended. You are the future leaders. I'm running for office to protect your future. Thank you to the City of Oconomowoc for providing this space to host this event. And hello, Representative Dietrich. Glad to have this opportunity to discuss philosophy and policy. The crisis of COVID and its collateral damage are the most urgent issues of our time. This challenge requires leadership and action, and the time is now. 200,000 Americans have died from COVID, and over 1,259 precious lives have died in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we currently have the highest COVID growth in the nation. When the Republican-led legislature stopped meeting on April 15th, there were only 166 cases. Last week, we had a record of 2,000 cases in one day. And as of this morning, Wisconsin has the most hospitalizations since the beginning of the pandemic. We do not have this pandemic under control. So now, right now, it's the time for our leaders to meet, discuss, and support us. Your government has not met for 160 days. That's 5 months of no action. I will be a voice for working families in these urgent times. I've taught in schools for almost 20 years as a national board educator. I'm raising 5 amazing kids, 3 of them in public schools, and I'm married to a first responder, a firefighter, for 22 years. I bring to the table honesty, compassion, and I will use research and experts to guide our decisions. I believe in working incredibly hard to achieve aspirations, and I value families' hard work. Your affordable health care is a top priority, and I will not play politics with wearing a mask to keep us safe. I am with 80% of Wisconsinites that believe that we can have safer communities with universal background checks and ERPO, Extreme Risk Prevention Order. Your Representative Dietrich and her Republican Party would not even discuss these bills in session. I was a participant in the Columbine Remembrance Walkout with the Oconomowoc High School students. I stood with pride with my family at the End White Silence gathering in our community to listen and respect voices of color. I obviously support first responders, including our police officers, knowing that they need us to support them. We must step up to support training and resources to promote peace. Again, Representative Dietrich did not meet to discuss the bills that were on the floor to help heal and move us forward. I know that you want a government that doesn't cheat you. In 2010, the Republican Party met behind locked doors with the best mapping experts and used partisan maps and data to draw your district maps so that your elected officials would not lose. This is called gerrymandering. The party that has been in control for over a decade is trying to erode so many things we hold dear in the name of small government and personal freedom. I'm here because people are asking a more important question. What kind of a community do we want for our children? In the hardest of hard times, the legislature is not doing anything to help. Just this week, Representative Dietrich announced that she condemns the governor's continued power grab in continuing the mask order. And according to Representative Dietrich, the illness no longer has a high possibility of a large number of deaths or serious long-term disabilities among humans, end quote. And the governor is breaking the law. It is distortion and ignores the facts. The party leadership are using incendiary language in a time of community suffering. Other than passing the COVID bills in mid-April, and by the way, late, so we lost $25 million, the only COVID-related actions have been suing the governor and his administration for overreach and pressuring our school districts to open without supporting how they can open safely. Wisconsin continues to be left behind, from not believing that the virus causes significant damage and illness to trickle-down economics that does not work for most citizens. Our rankings are falling and young families are leaving our state. And Republicans have left us with no plan. And this no plan idea in the pandemic is hurting us fiscally and physically. I run because I know we need to do the hard work. We will do better when we all do better. And when we embrace our most precious resources, we create thriving communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for those introductions. We will now begin questions. Just a reminder, you will have 2 minutes to answer each question.
All right. Given the current circumstances regarding the COVID-19 global pandemic, we are seeing an increase in stress and mental health issues. How would you suggest we address issues of mental health in our communities?
These are difficult times. We need one another for support, for learning, for friendship, the loss of jobs and wages, loss of school connections, and the fears about the future contribute to stress. But this is what we know. Mental health has been a serious concern even before the pandemic, and it's highlighted even more now. We need access to mental health professionals. I was endorsed by the National Social Workers Association because my platform understands that we can't just say we need it, we need to actually follow through. Currently, the recommended social worker ratio in our schools is 1 to 250 students. What we actually have in Wisconsin is 1 to 1,500 students. These are the facts. 1 in 5 children have a serious mental illness. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. And 50% of youth need mental treatment that they have not received. Representative Dietrich had an opportunity to make real change here, but she did not support Governor Evers' budget with $44 million for mental health services for children and farmers. Representative Dietrich and the Republican Party had an opportunity to pass all of their suicide task force prevention bills, but since they stopped meeting, only one was passed. Representative Dietrich does not support Medicaid expansion, which brings federal dollars in the billions to our state for mental health resources. I will prioritize the availability and affordability of mental health professionals, accept Medicaid expansion, support school funding for mental health care professionals, and incentives for healthcare professionals for training. You see what Representative says and what we have actually done. This is of paramount concern, and I'm committed to the well-being of our children, families, and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we welcome Representative Barbara Dietrich.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to tell you that some things you've heard are factually incorrect, but backing to the last election in 2018, I've supported mental health issues and coverage of those from day one. We see a huge correlation to mental health issues, substance abuse, crime, things of this nature. We did have a suicide prevention task force, and I voted for the bills that were put forth by the task force this session. I'll tell you a little bit about them. I've heard a number of constituents go, why is this suicide, hotline number on the back of student IDs? Well, that's because we passed that into law, because we want you to have quick, easy access that if you need to reach out to somebody for help, you've got that there. Other things that were supported in this package were peer-to-peer support, things of that nature. But if you look at some of the mental health issues with COVID-19, it's because of the isolation. So we need to find a way to safely be together. And I think that we figured that out more in the past 6 months. And your age group, under 21, we haven't lost a single student or person in the state of Wisconsin under the age of 21 from COVID-19. So I see a need to continue to have mental health parity is something we can look at. And also we passed telehealth for mental health. Medicaid covered this session. So there's more work to be done, no doubt, and I'm all for that.
Thank you.
That's right. Sorry.
Next question. The Trump administration recently announced that they would be stopping organizations that provide abortion referrals from getting federal family planning money. This would provide massive cuts to Planned Parenthood. How do you propose Wisconsin supports the citizens who may no longer have Planned Parenthood as an option for services including family planning, physical exams, and STD testing?
I was so excited you all came up with this question because this is actually something we dealt with in the Wisconsin State Legislature this session. Did you know that for every Planned Parenthood in the state of Wisconsin, there are 7 federally qualified health clinics and rural health clinics that patients can access? And I fought to move dollars from Planned Parenthood to those clinics with a bill that I wrote. I have a map here that we can access afterwards if you students would like it. And it shows most of our Planned Parenthoods are highly concentrated in Milwaukee, Madison, maybe a few in the Green Bay area. But the federally qualified health clinics and rural health clinics cover much more of the state. So that is not necessarily a bad thing because this money can be directed to have a full complement of healthcare issues for the things you brought up, STDs and general health clinic. Also, your general private practitioners also will accept Medicaid dollars. So there are many more options than just Planned Parenthood.
Thank you.
As a mother of 5, including my eldest who is 14, my youngest who's less than 1 year old, and as a professional educator, I'm an advocate for comprehensive health services and family planning and reproductive care. As community leaders, we strive to reduce harm and increase wellness for everyone. The ACA expanded healthcare to millions, but still many cannot afford it. My priority is to protect the ACA and expand coverage by accepting Medicaid expansion funds. Abortions have dropped significantly in Wisconsin. In the 80s, it was 220,000 a year, and now in 2018, it was around 6,000, due to better access to contraception and sexual health resources. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin serves more than 31,000 people throughout the state, but their Title X funding ended in 2019 already, and they still serve their clients with basic services like cancer screening and birth control. The availability of contraception is the best way to reduce unplanned pregnancies, unintended pregnancies, unsafe abortions, and maternal death. I trust women to make serious medical decisions with their doctor. We have the power to reduce abortions with healthy, educated people of all ages. And I'll tell you this, friends and family members I know used to have this as their #1 voting issue, but this is no longer true for them. Pro-life means protecting women, babies, children, neighbors, and families with affordable health care, safety from gun violence, cleaning poisonous lead from our water supply, supporting our first responders, and having the mental health professionals we need. So it is clear, if you value life, you support health care.
Thank you.
Candidates, how will you encourage young people who are not yet of voting age to still be engaged in the democratic process?
Now more than ever, it is essential that young people know their power and take action. This next election will decide the future of our state, our country, and our world. Will we address climate change before it's too late? Will we care enough about our fellow human beings that we insist everyone has rights and privileges? Will we stop the erosion of democracy through gerrymandering and rigged maps, end dark money in political campaigns and voter suppression, which makes it especially difficult for young voters? Will we have the hard conversations about systemic racism and other forms of oppression and start to heal communities and move forward? During the civil rights movement, it was the youth who led. We had the courage and the vision when the elders did not. As young as 14 years old, they went to jail to fight for the integration of schools. Look at Greta Thunberg, her leadership to force adults to address climate change. The students of Marjorie Stoneman High School, they say enough is enough, and the students who peacefully, safely protest for racial justice because they care about how people are treated. Young people have always been the brave ones, the insightful ones, and when you don't vote, you give your power away. If you don't know what's going on, someone else does, and they will make decisions for the benefit of themselves and not you. So running for office, I have met so many smart, hardworking, informed young people like yourselves. You give me hope. And I encourage you to remain active in your civic organizations. Read and listen to current issues. Remember kindness when discussing. Civility and an open mind will grow your wisdom. Challenge your friends and parents with reflective questions. Research and watch films to question your belief system, and encourage everyone you know to vote as soon as you can, because democracy only works when we do.
Thank you.
This is a great question, and I especially love it because I am known as the legislator on the Republican side of the legislature who really involves youth in the democratic process. You are valuable. What I would like to see is students know more about their Constitution and how that works in this country. I think we could get much better at that. I want you to know great things about your country, about your state, about your municipality, and why they're worth fighting for. That really engages people in voting. Aside from that, I would also say I have no problem continuing to engage students because I have been very big on internships. The organization I founded and ran for 16 years prior to running for office was a nonprofit for parents raising children with special needs and disabilities. And one of our core programs was mentoring. So I love mentoring the next generation. It's like a bucket line. We got to bring you all up because you're next generation's leaders. So I love bringing youth out to knock on doors, to attend events, to just be a part of that dialogue so you're familiar with the language and you're familiar with how life works in general when it comes to the democratic process.
Thank you.
All right.
Not myself this time.
Okay. How will you make education a priority in our community from a state level?
Another great question. Education, no matter what rhetoric you hear, is a priority for people. The challenge is how to address it, okay? I think that's what lawmakers don't always agree on. Did you know that the #1 budget item we pay for in the state of Wisconsin is public education? 45% of our state biennial budget this last session went towards public education. And it was that we are funding schools at $12.5 billion over this biennium, the highest amount ever. Now, that being said, I will tell you that our biggest challenge is that the state of Wisconsin is not like your federal government. We are required by law to balance our budget. So back in May, I got a hold of each of the district administrators and superintendents of our school districts and let them know, hey, alert, alert, our financial picture in this state may be of concern to you. When you have a biennial budget, you get a certain dollar amount the first year and an increase usually the second year. I let the districts know you get that increase come July 1st, but we need to proceed with caution because we may have to come back and do a budget repair bill where we address shortfalls in the state budget. We will have to look at what this looks like in our next biennial budget, and it's going to be challenging, but I'm up for the task. Leaders do hard things.
Thank you. How do you feel about the public transportation options currently available in our city?
Mind if I answer that last question?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Great public schools are the foundation of our communities. As a teacher who's worked in public school at every level from kindergarten to UW-Madison, I'm a fervent supporter of the necessity of funding our schools for every Wisconsinite, not only to help children reach their potential, but for our state to compete as the best place to raise their families. Every realtor knows families move to the best place they can afford for the schools. It is unfortunate that my opponent does not feel the same. In the last 10 years, under Republican control, we can no longer attract and retain highly qualified educators. Neighbors and teachers were made enemies with fights over collective bargaining and fair wages. and districts are forced to continually go to referendum for operating costs like Kettle Moraine. Classes are cut, and we are actually funding our schools adjusted for inflation at 2011 levels. My opponent puts voucher schools first. Voucher schools that do not have to play by the same rules as public schools. They have a higher reimbursement for special ed. They're not required to meet the needs of the IEP students, and they have the ability to refuse education to any student for any reason. She demands reopening schools face-to-face during a pandemic without meeting and discussing safety protocols or support, and the Republican Party has cut $250 million to our UW system while our rankings are falling. She voted no on the Governor Evers' budget that supported children and schools with the recommendations from a bipartisan blue ribbon task force. The value differences are clear. I want to fix the funding formula and freeze the voucher program that bleeds resources away from the public schools. Relieve student loan debt to help families living paycheck to paycheck. Provide more incentives for trade schools and UW extension opportunities. And I understand that our UW system has a return on investment of $23 to $1. Every dollar we invest, we get 23 in return. When we invest in education, we reap an educated population and economic rewards for our state. The difference is clear. I will never frame education as a tax burden, but an immense privilege to invest in the future leaders of our community.
Thank you. Okay, now on to the next question. How do you feel about the public transportation options currently available in our city? Do you believe we have enough options? And if not, what will you do to increase the options?
Thank you for making this a central issue. Public transportation is a smart investment for residents of all ages. The option to travel to work, for entertainment, to visit friends and family, increases workforce capacity and reduces carbon emissions. The top concern for future lawmakers is smart transportation options. This could include light rail, low-emission busing, bicycle trails, shared ride systems, and shared bike or alternative rental options. But under Scott Walker, in 2010, he rejected $810 million in federal funds to make us a national competitor in business. And then we had to pay back $59 million to get out of previous commitments. With innovative public transportation, we have the capacity to gain 9,500 jobs and $700 million to our state. This is the kind of forward thinking we need to embrace. Not only smart transportation, but jobs and more revenue for our state. We have a century of being car-centric, but today's young people are opting to live in cities that are less dependent on individual automobiles, and this impacts every generation. Elderly are often stranded and isolated and need help getting to doctor's appointments. Cities could be walkable, and transportation should be innovative. Today, we have the opportunity to discuss regional rail transit, a vibrant national hub with the Twin Cities Milwaukee-Chicago rail. Let's discuss this. If we want progress, we need to support a public and private partnership with innovation, investment, and vision, and how we can make our future even brighter. Economwalk is a community that could benefit from all of these advantages. It makes sense to support public interests that promote well-being, increase workforce capacity, entertainment spending, and the health of our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dietrich, whenever you're ready.
I guess here's where there's a clear difference between us two candidates. I spent a major part of my youth and young adult life in the city of Milwaukee. And if you go to downtown Milwaukee right now, you find the hop is pretty empty. And we sunk a small fortune into that, despite receiving federal dollars. Now, I'm going to tell you some things I'm proud of out here. When you talk about the elderly, Silver Streak out here is a great nonprofit, and coming from most recently a nonprofit operation prior to running for the legislature, I see the value of a small nonprofit being able to use those dollars far more efficiently than our government can, and to enact a plan faster than government can. So those are good things. I was very happy to see Uber come out here, that is for certain. But I do agree with my opponent in that I think definitely things that we can work on from an economic development perspective is workforce transportation. And I think a lot of employers have the incentive to do that and do that, where they provide ride share from maybe more densely populated areas to come and work out here in our industries. The same is going on in Jefferson County, who has a wonderful operation called Thrive Economic Development that also works with Dodge County. And so these are all pieces of the puzzle that economic development specialists and manufacturers, businesses work on to help get employees to the jobs that are going to support them.
Thank you.
What plans do you have to combat pollution in our waterways and parks?
Another great set of questions. I am going to tell you we had another terrific task force this legislative session, and it was the Speaker's Water Quality Task Force. And I'm proud to have signed on to numerous pieces of this bipartisan package. I also was on a bill to create basically floating pollution mitigation islands, if you will, in places like our local lakes. We can also feel very proud that in our area, we have the Oconomowoc Watershed Program and Tall Pines Conservancy that are really leading the way. So I've worked hard to try and engage them and connect them in things we're doing on the state level. I don't think that water quality is a partisan issue. And our state has had some challenges, but we're moving the football down the field, and I look forward to doing more the next session.
Thank you.
We live in one of the most beautiful areas of our state. Surrounded by lakes and rivers, we embrace lake country living with swimming, boating, fishing. I was shocked to discover that 3 water bodies in our district are on the impaired waters list for the EPA: Lac La Belle, Oconomowoc Lake, and the Rock River. We used to be a proud state that protected our natural resources, the home of Earth Day and Aldo Leopold, but this past decade, we have seriously declined in our environmental protections under Republican control. In Kewaunee County, just north of us, large farming operations have been the source of toxic wells, and now their underground water supply systems are poisoned with fecal matter. When one body is polluted, it has the capacity to impact other connected water systems, above and underground. By supporting our farmers with green-based healthy initiatives and education programs, we can reduce nitrates in our water supply. Lead remediation. In Watertown, Wisconsin, in our district, Watertown has higher levels of lead poisoning than children in Flint, Michigan. Lead poisoning can cause brain damage in children and infants, and the governor's budget had $40 million in lead abatement, but it was eliminated by the Republican Party, saying it was unfair to send money to one area. State government is the best resource we have to protect clean water, to prevent even more areas in our state to become toxic. Our families, our state tourism and economy depend on us to act wisely now. Governor Evers declared 2019 to be the year of clean water and to be able to create public action. The Republicans and my opponent eroded the capacity of the DNR to actually protect us, and they have a failing score from the conservation voters. I'm endorsed by the Clean Action Fund and conservation voters and will always prioritize your health, the economy, and tourism because we all need clean water.
Thank you.
Okay. How will you work to make sure all residents in the 38th Assembly District feel valued and heard when you are making decisions for the greater good of the whole community?
My job in the Assembly will be to work for the greater good of the entire community, as opposed to narrow interests and rigid platforms. It is the great standard in which lawmakers should be judged. I will listen with compassion and kindness, and I understand that people can lash out in pain and fear, but it is the role of a leader to respond with civility and reason. It is crucial to listen to resident voices and community businesses to create a positive vision for our future, for our district and state, because every voice is integral in this community. And now, every voice is not heard. Because of gerrymandering, when districts are drawn with extreme partisan goals in mind, the seats are safe for that party. The officials don't have to worry about being challenged or defeated. The Republican majority legislature succeeded in packing and splitting our communities to create the assembly districts that we have today. We can take action by adopting fair maps with an independent, nonpartisan districting model. The specific actions that I would do: I will hold town meetings to listen to concerns. I value accountability and communication. I will stay educated with each community in our wide district. But bottom line, civility is required. We should uplift our common values and work for a society where everyone can thrive. Governing requires we make hard choices and how we use our limited resources. And this challenging work requires the very best of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, don't use this as my 2 minutes, but Ms. Brooks, come on now. You know, for having it clean in between us. All right, back on topic. I looked at this question, ladies, and I want to challenge you on one thing. You are responsible for your feelings. Each of us are responsible for our own feelings. Don't give that power to someone else, all right? As far as letting people feel valued and heard, you have to have a pretty thick skin to do this job. Thicker than I even imagined when I first ran. I've been called the most vile, disgusting names, had my family attacked, horrible things. I've welcomed people in my office to sit down at my table and discuss issues who have sat here at public forums and mocked me to my face. I have experience doing this. I will sit down and talk to anyone of any opinion. The only thing I would tell you is that if you can't behave like an adult, then you forfeited really your right to have a conversation. And when you can calm down and act like an adult and have a dialogue, then you will get heard and likely feel more valued yourself. I think conversations have to continue going, and that's why I held so many listening sessions and why you will always see me out in the community at events throughout the entire district, not just Oconomowoc, because it's not sitting in Madison in an office where people feel valued and heard. It's out there being accessible and approachable to people in the community.
Thank you.
You bet.
What plans do you have to improve the safety in regards of possessions of firearms in Wisconsin?
Glad you asked that too. because that addresses some things I've been working on. First of all, I make no apologies that I support our Second Amendment to the Constitution, that right to bear arms. We look at how dangerous this world is right now. You ladies, you have a right to protect yourselves. I will fight for that. That being said, I think we can honor our Second Amendment while still keeping people safer. I mean, we look at what happens every weekend, the number of deaths we see in Chicago and Milwaukee. I get to the point where I want to remove the news apps from my phone. I'm so tired of getting alerts about another person shot and killed in Milwaukee. One thing I did this session was sign on with a bipartisan bill with Representative Subek and Senator Koyenga, and that was giving us the ability to remove weapons privileges from people who are convicted of domestic abuse or who are fugitive from justice. I think that's important. Also, I would tell you that I started working after Waukesha's school shooting last December. I've worked in depth with our Department of Justice Office of School Safety. I think we're making a mistake if we remove our school resource officers. You all know Oconomowoc has one of the best school resource officer programs in the state, and we're working on trying to standardize training. And I would like to see some grants maybe written into our budget to help school districts that don't have that. Additionally, I would like to see more resources go to our police departments, because when a police officer has to respond to what is known in state statute as a Chapter 51 call, it takes them out of duty for probably their entire shift. So we need to address that.
Thank you.
Gun safety is a top concern with many of the conversations that I have around the district, and I stand by you as I spoke at the Columbine Remembrance Walkout in 2018. As a mom and former teacher, I am outraged that our kids are continually participating in active shooter drills. You are taught to break windows, throw objects at intruders, and teachers are asked to leave students in the hallway if there's a threat nearby. Let us review for a minute a few of the especially tragic things that have happened in our country. 6 murdered in the Miller Coors plant in Milwaukee just in February, 23 at a Walmart in El Paso, 17 at Parkland High School, 71 enjoying a concert in Las Vegas, 49 in Orlando, and 26 first graders and their teachers in Sandy Hook. My daughter was in first grade at the same time, and I thought surely the laws would change to protect our families and neighbors. Now my daughter's in high school, and nothing has changed. You can still buy a gun from your neighbor, and there's no avenue to help deter violence from those who are at risk. This is normal in America. Guns have been given more rights than our mental health and safety. The gun homicide rate in the U.S. is 25 times higher than in other developed countries. More than 99% of deaths from guns are from shootings other than mass shootings. And there are 2 pieces of legislation that would help greatly reduce gun violence: universal background checks and extreme risk protection order. I come from a hunting family, and we understand deeply that you can legally and safely own firearms and create legislation to keep our communities safe. I attended as an observer with Moms Demand Action at the Capitol when the session was called, and nothing, no debate and no action. I really don't know how we can live with ourselves to say yes to the gun lobby and no to the children in our state. Meanwhile, I will always speak about the myth that guns make you safer.
Thank you.
How do you feel Wisconsin should tackle the substance abuse issues that have led to our current opioid crisis?
The opioid epidemic has reached a crisis level, quadrupling over the last 16 years, and now is the leading cause of accidental death in our state. We should not criminalize those who are struggling with addiction, but provide prevention and rehabilitation resources. My husband is a firefighter, and he is seen firsthand on a weekly basis in his course as a paramedic and firefighter. And these costs are great in terms of the lives lost and the economy and the criminal justice system. Opioids are commonly prescribed in pain control, and they are highly addictive. But even before the pandemic, addiction treatment was difficult to access, but it is treatable. What we should do is continue to support existing bills and laws like the HOPE bills. We should increase addiction treatment services. We should accept Medicaid expansion. It would increase health care for over 80,000 Wisconsinites and bring over $1 billion to our state. We should destigmatize addiction. It should not be criminal. Those folks need help, and we could help reform their lives and become contributing members of our society again. We should have affordable health care and lower premiums so that out-of-pocket expenses don't prevent people from seeing their doctors. My opponent has opposed Medicaid expansion, and the legislature has not met since April 15th. We cannot afford any more of this do-nothing assembly. People's lives are at stake. And this question comes down to two main tenets: understanding the struggle of being human with compassion, and supporting treatment services. For me, as a leader, it is about human life, well-being, and what our society prioritizes. This is the definition of love your neighbor as yourself.
Thank you.
Here again, I think you're going to find my opponent and I have quite a bit of common ground. I ran the first time very much concerned about the opioid epidemic, and then I got into office and I found out it's not just opioids. Let's talk about meth. Let's talk about heroin. These are concerns. I talked to our former Attorney General, who's now a judge, Brad Schimmel, and he's like, Barb, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You just get one drug problem addressed and another one pops up. People who traffic drugs are not nice people, and they're looking for a way to get you hooked and get you addicted to these things. There's a lot of debate about marijuana, and if I could find a way for medical marijuana to be used without the addictive properties to it, I would certainly be for it. We talk about the HOPE agenda, which was put forth by my colleague, Representative John Nygren. He will tell you that marijuana was a gateway drug for his daughter. But we did get some bills, additional bills through. We got legislation put in place that where you wouldn't lose your job if you were seeking treatment. We expanded Medicaid assistance for peer-to-peer recovery coaches, and a number of different pieces of legislation. And I was on board for all of that. Even alternative therapies like acupuncture, they're finding, helps with pain management, or even with dealing with anxiety, that a lot medicate with the self-medicate with these drugs. So there's a lot more work to do, and I look forward to continuing to work on these issues. They're critical. And one little thing, yay to the 38th Assembly District, because we are on the front lines. We have accomplished some great work with a variety of organizations we have here.
Thank you.
In this era of political division, polarization, and gridlock, how will you try to bring our communities back together?
Great question. I think it all starts with the person in the mirror, doesn't it? How many times have you all heard, be the change you want to see? And I joke around about that a lot in my office, because it's like, come on, don't be a jerk. You know, let's talk, but don't be a jerk about it. I feel especially heartened that we got some really great bipartisan legislation accomplished this session, as I've told you. And once I got to the legislature, you know, what you see on TV as far as this fractious relationship, most of us get along. I will tell you that I have had some wonderful conversations with colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and we're collegial and we enjoy each other's company. It's just a little challenging sometimes getting to work out how we want to solve a problem together. So again, like I said, it starts with the person in the mirror. And if we can model that and be warm and welcoming to each other, I think that goes a long way.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking this question. Political division is eroding our sense of community and care for one another that was once so important to Americans. And to be clear, speaking to gridlock, here in Wisconsin, the legislature agenda is decided by the majority in control, and currently the Republican majority can accomplish almost anything they propose. So it is strange they refuse to hold meetings and make their own agenda happen. This is not gridlock. This is refusing to do the job they were elected to do. What I will do as an elected representative is to bring communities together. I will hold myself to the highest standards. These include communicating with civility, speaking up with courage, and listening with compassion. As elected officials, we must honor the oath to serve the greater good. I will use facts and data to drive solutions, not political party fear and name-calling tactics. I will do my part to create opportunities for all people of all ages, of every walk of life. I will come into session when we are facing multiple crises for your health and when your jobs are at risk. Our country has incredible power with our rights and freedoms to discuss multiple opinions. And yet, over the past few years, the level of hate and division has caused harm to so many. I am increasingly surprised that the advice of medical experts has been politicized. Wearing a mask to save the lives of others while we await a vaccine, how have we arrived at this place that we don't trust our own medical experts? There is too much incivility right here, even in Economwalk. We should not ignore it. It is a form of intimidation that actually works. Using personal attacks on character that shuts people down. No one wants to feel attacked. Decent people are stepping down from their service in office, and this is tearing communities apart. I would ask Representative Dietrich to unite with me to call this out and help put an end to it.
Thank you. I now invite Melissa Winker to provide her 2-minute closing statement.
Voters have a clear choice. We deserve to have a representative that we trust with decisions that affect our health, our livelihoods, and our future. And these are your choices. Wisconsin, under Republican control for the last decade, we are 50th in new business startups for 3 years in a row. We lead the nation in farm bankruptcies, and farmers are 2 times more likely to commit suicide. It's difficult to attract workers, and wages are stagnant. Poverty has risen in our state, and our education rankings have fallen. It's difficult to attract highly qualified educators. We are the worst state for income, racial equality, the widest achievement gap for Black and white children in the nation, and the worst mortality rate for our Black babies. What is possible with priorities that value your health, hard work, and our future? Affordable health care can be available to everyone. We can make this state one of the best places to raise your healthy family. We can accept the Medicaid expansion money, $1.4 billion, to help folks get insurance they need. We can support our workforce and find a place for everyone in this diversified economy. Address the problems of living wage, expand broadband and child care, move forward with honest conversations and law enforcement reforms. respect democracy and end gerrymandering, demand fair voting rights, and finally, prioritize our children with public education as a foundational investment. You support these priorities. 80% support gun violence legislation. 72% support fair maps. 82% support Medicaid expansion. And it's obvious that the Republican Party is not listening. We are tired of division, and we want our government to work for us. We are listening, I am listening, and I'm learning, and I'm leading. The vision for our sustainable, growing Wisconsin is bright. I am proud of the work of you all here tonight in JSA. But now it is your decision, to the community out here who are listening, to make your plan and vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one.
I invite Representative Dietrich to provide her 2-minute closing statement.
Okay, and I would like to nominate Ms. Brooks for the Clorox Wipe Award. Well, once again, I want to thank the students and adults involved with this forum today. I especially want to thank the City of Oconomowoc and Mayor Magnus for making today possible. I've detailed for you what I've accomplished for you in the Wisconsin Assembly this session and answered the questions that you've put forth. I love serving you, and it's my humble honor to do so. I want to conclude reminding you 94.1% of what we got accomplished legislatively passed in a bipartisan fashion. And I want to also conclude by telling you what I'm telling voters at doors. My 3 priorities have been, in a nutshell, and continue to be strong families. Having served as that chair on the Speaker's task force on adoption, I know that parents need support as they fight to have their children educated, keep their income intact, and protect life at every phase. My priority is a vibrant workforce. The health of our economy relies on creating good-paying jobs and having a workforce with the skills to fill them. That's why I've been proud to expand youth apprenticeships and serve as vice chair of workforce development. And safe communities, finally. From calling for greater funding for long-term care facilities amidst the COVID-19 pandemic to working with the state DOJ on school safety. One of my top priorities is to keep you and your family safe. The recent violence we've seen in our state cannot continue. I strongly support law enforcement and will never support calls to defund the police. I ask for your vote again this November, and I thank you again for inviting us both to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to our 2 wonderful candidates for taking their time to be here today, the mayor and his staff, as well as Ms. Brooks, our wonderful teacher advisor, and as well as our viewers at home. Thank you all and have a great night.